The Warburton family with their 9 years old son Andrew went to a vacation in Beaver Bend 10 miles outside of Halifax of Nova Scotia in Canada with their friends and relatives in June of 1986. The family was staying in a relative's house which was close to Tucker Lake. This area has lots of lake with thick vegetations and houses were scattered all over the place. On July 1st of 1985, Andrew told his parents he was going to swim with relatives' children in Tucker Lake. By the time Andrew got his parents' permission, the main group of children had left for the lake, but the path was very clear and it was a short distance. At the time Andrew left the house, he was wearing tennis shoes and swimming suit. He left the house following the other boys by just a short distance. The other kids went to the lake, swam and came to the house. It was there when they realized they had never met up with Andrew. The parents and relatives immediately started their search. 1 hour after, authorities were notified and few hours later, there were 100 people searching the woods for Andrew. Just the night Andrew went missing, a heavy rain started to pour down and hampered the effort. The next day, there were 1,000 searchers combing the area. The spokesperson of the search and rescue team stated Andrew was spooking. He continued, Andrew was just running around like a little animal. They claimed 2 searchers saw the boy, but he ran so fast that they couldn't keep up. The interesting part is that they had canine dogs and helicopters assisting with the search. How a canine dog couldn't keep up with a 9-year-old boy is the question. The search and rescue team was so frustrated with no result of their search that they asked for help from the Canadian military and the military responded. On July 6th, there were Canadian armed forces in the area searching for Andrew. On July 7th, 6 days after Andrew went missing, the military personnel found 2 tennis shoes near Tucker Lake around noon. The parents confirmed they belonged to Andrew. A more intensive search 200 yards outside the primary search area found the body of Andrew at 5:30 p.m. of the same day. The body was found in a marshy ground 3 kilometers from the relative's house where Andrew started walking towards the lake. They did an autopsy on the body and the examiner stated he died sometime between 3 to 4 days after he went missing. That means he was alive for 3 days where searchers were combing the area shoulder by shoulder. Why would Andrew, who was wet, take off his shoes and go to a marshy ground to die when there are thousands of searchers in the area shouting for him? The Andrew Warburton case remains a mystery to this day. Two families from Santa Fe, New Mexico took their kids and went to Santa Fe ski basin to spend the day vacationing and enjoying some nature time. The group arrived on June 7, 1951 just before noon and set their picnic site. The area they chose was at the bottom of the Santa Fe ski basin, 11,000 feet in elevation. This area was not operational for skiing, but it was a beautiful spot. As the families were setting up the camp, their 3 kids, Larry McGee, 7 years old, Janet McGee, 5 years old, and Stephen Cross, 3 years old, were running around and enjoying the weather. Near noon, the families realized they hadn't seen the kids for a while, so they started searching for them. They continued their search until 3 p.m. and after not finding any of the kids, they went to the ski area and notified the authorities. New Mexico State Police took control of the search and rescue and immediately asked for help from the Air Force. On the first night, police set up huge spotlights pointing up into the mountain in hopes the kids would see the light and walk towards it. The first night was uneventful and nothing happened. On the next morning at 8 a.m., 500 people volunteered to help with the search. Most of the searchers were armed forces and the search was informal. Each group picked an area and started searching. 38 hours after the kids went missing, armed forces personnel were 3.5 miles from the location the kids were last seen when they saw a head poke out among a series of downed logs. One of the kids looked up and asked for help. All 3 kids were found higher in elevation than they disappeared originally. All 3 of them were in a really good condition despite being out for 38 hours. The searchers said the kids looked like were sleeping or resting. When the kids were back at the headquarters, the parents and officials questioned them. One of the kids stated they had been chased by a bear. He claimed they were eating leaves and sometimes drinking from a stream. They also said they've been seeing the searchers around, but they were afraid to yell because they thought they were big gorillas. The reporter who was asking the questions didn't follow up on this statement. One of the reasons that come to mind why the kids were scared is that they had been frightened by something that looked like gorillas before seeing the searchers. Also, if a bear was chasing the kids, there would be no way the bear couldn't catch them. Kids under 10 years old cannot outrun a bear. There is no more information regarding this case. Midi Rivers was a 75-year-old fellow who really enjoyed the outdoors. He lived his entire life in Bennington area of Vermont. He used to fish and hunt the area anytime he was free. He was working in the area as a game guide and helping other hunters. On November 12, 1945, Midi was taking 4 hunters onto Glastonbury Mountains. They spent the day on the mountains and were coming back down. Midi made this trip hundreds of times. He knew the mountains as his backyard. They spent the day on the mountains and were coming back down. Midi had made this trip hundreds of times. He knew the mountains as his backyard. As the group was going back, Midi got slightly ahead and never arrived at their vehicles. A search was initiated and the searchers combed the trail and the area Midi was before his disappearance. The only item they found was a bullet next to a creek along the path Midi was traveling. Searchers assumed he might have leaned down to get a drink and it fell out of his pocket. Midi knew the area very well, so there is no way he would be lost. If the searchers couldn't find his body, it means he was taken from the area by force. One scenario that comes to mind is he might have been walking close to the river, saw a threat and removed the bullet from his coat but got overpowered. Midi was never found.